Where exactly are we going, Master Kenobi? Ahsoka asked. The coordinates we have logged don't have much information on the temple records. The Jedi's T-6 shuttle hurtled through the blue void of hyperspace towards their destination. Anakin Skywalker and his former master, Obi Wan Kenobi, sat in the pilot and co-pilot seats, whilst Ahsoka Tano, Anakin's Padawan, sat behind them. I found that the temple records aren't always reliable, Obi-Wan replied, and often incomplete. The planet we are headed to is called Lothal. It's a small, sparsely populated farming colony. And why are we visiting farmers? Ahsoka added. Obi-Wan shook his head. I'm not entirely sure. Master Yoda didn't give us specifics on the mission. He simply said, we should be here. And Master Yoda loves to be cryptic, Anakin added, earning him a scornful glare from Kenobi. He said, the Force will guide you, which is just about as helpful as the other 100 times he says it. Obi-Wan sighed. Just fly, Anakin. The shuttle dropped out of hyperspace, abruptly bringing the planet of Lothal into view. Its surface was a mixture of rocky yellow and savanna-like greens, quickly making it evident that this was, in fact, a farming world. Anakin piloted the ship down into the planet's atmosphere, and soon enough they were flying across the surface, maneuvering between craggy mountain peaks. So, Anakin said, is the Force guiding you yet? Give me a moment, Obi-Wan replied, before closing his eyes and reaching out his hand. A droning whistle filled the air around them, signifying that the Force was reaching out to them. It suddenly ceased, and Obi-Wan opened his eyes. We're close, he said. I sense something. I'm not entirely sure what, but whatever it is, it's causing a massive disturbance in the Force. Anakin flew the ship in the direction that Obi-Wan pointed him, and eventually they came upon a massive, solitary peak resting at the head of a lake. Intricate circular patterns were embedded into the ground surrounding the peak, almost unnoticeable. The Jedi set the ship down gently, and the three disembarked from their craft. What is this place? Ahsoka peered at the designs on the ground. It looks like a giant version of ancient Jedi meditation circles? I think it is, Obi-Wan stated, although these serve a different purpose, I believe. We're looking at a Jedi temple, and a very old one, too. I see a mountain, Anakin said sarcastically. The mountain is the temple, Obi-Wan said. The door is locked, and clearly the Force is the key. Anakin peered at the circles on the ground. He could see now. There were two that stood out from the others, placed perfectly apart, with lines that traced back up to the mountain ahead of them. Wait, Anakin turned to his former master. You're telling me that we need to use the Force to move the mountain? Obi-Wan simply nodded. You and Ahsoka should do it. The young Togruta looked nervous. Why don't you try it instead, Master Kenobi? I believe it requires a master and an apprentice to open, Obi-Wan explained. And since Anakin is no longer my apprentice, I cannot help him do it. But I just don't think I'm ready for something like this, she pleaded. Believe in yourself. Trust in the Force, Obi-Wan encouraged her. Think of it as one of Anakin's more unorthodox lessons. Ahsoka paused for a moment before nodding. Come on, Snips, Anakin said. Let's do this. The two assumed position in each of the circles, and stretched their hands out towards the mountain, their eyes closed in concentration. Obi-Wan stood behind them, stroking his chin thoughtfully. The pair began to let out groans of exertion as a great rumbling shook the ground, before the mountain slowly began to rise up out of the ground, turning like a giant drill, revealing a massive column of rock underneath. The rock kept rising until it was over 50 meters high, and only then did the two stop. The mountain buckled, shaking the ground, but remained in place. At the base of the rock, where the designs etched into the ground met, there was an open doorway waiting for them. I guess that's our entrance, Anakin said, gasping for breath. Shall we take a look inside? Obi Wan added with one of his trademark grins, before he began to approach the doorway. Anakin and Ahsoka followed close behind, and together the three of them entered the Jedi Temple. The inside was plain and bare, consisting of smooth, carved rock walls, with the occasionally crudely carved rock column. Eventually, the three of them entered a square room with a series of 4 columns arranged in the center. Across from their entrance was a tunnel that looked nothing like the rest of the temple, going off into the darkness. It took the three of them a while to finally notice the dead, skeletal body leaning against one of the columns. Ahsoka nearly gasped in fright at the sight of it. Anakin simply peered at it in a confused manner, and Obi-Wan actually knelt down to study it. Whoever it was, they were dressed in Jedi robes, but not the traditional Jedi robes. These looked much, much older. Obi-Wan parted the hem of the robes with the hand, finding a necklace with a medallion on it, engraved with the symbol of the Jedi Order. At least, it looked like the Jedi Order symbol. However, just like the dead man's robes, it was incredibly outdated. This is the symbol of the ancient Jedi Order, Obi-Wan said aloud. My theory must be correct. This temple is thousands of years old. How do you think he died? Anakin asked. If I had to guess, this temple serves as the trial for Padawans, Obi-Wan explained. This master must have waited for an eternity, but it seems his student never completed their trial. But why would the Force guide us here? Ahsoka said, confused. You two are far from Padawans, and I've already completed many trials of my own. Perhaps there is a different reason we are here, Obi-Wan suggested. Maybe— Wait! Ahsoka interrupted him, her head snapping to the side, alert. Do you hear that? Hear what? Both senior Jedi asked. That sound. Ahsoka trailed off, looking in the direction of the tunnel. It sounds like voices. Snips, that's crazy, Anakin said. This place is abandoned. No, I hear something. Ahsoka suddenly ran off towards the tunnel. I know it. Ahsoka, wait! Anakin groaned before running off after her. Obi-Wan simply stood back up, rolling his eyes and sighing. Always on the move, he muttered before chasing after the two. The three of them ran through the tunnels that branched out in the darkness for what felt like hours. Eventually, Ahsoka shouted. I see something, she said. A light! Ahsoka, wait! Her master shouted. It was too late. All of a sudden, they were blinded by a flash of light, and then everything went dark. The three Jedi woke up suddenly and found themselves in an unfamiliar place. It looked like the void of space, completely dark, dotted with distant stars. A giant circle illuminated by white lines spread out before them, with intersecting pathways and bridges. Everywhere they looked, they saw various shapes facing like paintings on a wall. They heard distant whispers all around them, barely audible. I am one with the Force, and the Force is with me. Good soldiers follow orders. Everything leading up to this moment has benefited us. Sounds accurate, not. I will finish what you started. Nothing happens by accident. There are some things far more frightening than death. What is this place? Ahsoka asked as the three of them got to their feet. I have no idea, Anakin replied. Ahsoka peered at the window-like shapes that lined the walls. All of them were circular, accompanied by various patterns along the outside. The one they had come through was surrounded by a circle of canine creatures. The next one she spotted was several feet to the right, had an intricate pattern of different symbols. Suddenly, the inside of the circle shimmered and formed into an image. Ahsoka watched as the inside of the circle depicted an unfamiliar man surrounded by fire. He held out his hands, and the fire parted around him. "Kanan!" a female voice shouted. Ahsoka looked to see a hovering craft carrying several people, a male and female human, and a green-skinned Twi'lek. The man parting the fire shared a long look at the Twi'lek before he directed his hands towards him. The ship was pushed out of the way, and the fire consumed him, killing him. He was using the Force, Ahsoka realized. But who was he? And how was I being shown this? Ahsoka moved on, giving the other windows glances. They all depicted moments she didn't recognize. Eventually, one caught her eye. The circular window was set inside of a large triangle. She saw the image materialize, seeing a figure dressed in all black, with a flowing cape. He stood inside of a massive pyramid-like structure, with a crystal in the center that was emanating bolts of violet electricity. The figure was holding out his hand, pulling something towards him. She saw a young boy holding a small triangular object in his hands, accompanied by a man who wore a Jedi Temple Guard mask on his head. Intrigued, Ahsoka continued to watch as it seemed the dark figure was pulling the object towards him with the Force. Suddenly, someone started coming up behind the figure. Before he could turn around, the person surged forwards, and in a silver flash, sliced the dark figure with a pair of lightsabers. It was then that Ahsoka saw who the person was. It was herself. A much, much older version of herself. She was holding two silver-bladed lightsabers, which seemed like a minuscule oddity compared to what she was seeing now. "Ahsoka!" The voice came from the boy inside the image. "Come on, hurry!" The Ahsoka inside the window turned to the boy and began to walk towards him, before a voice stopped her. A very familiar voice. "Ahsoka!" It was garbled and distorted, but it was unmistakably the voice of her own master. "Anakin?" Both Ahsokas called out for their master at the same time. The real Anakin came running up behind her. "What is it, Snips?" His face immediately fell when he saw what was being depicted on the window. The dark figure's mask had been sliced open, revealing a portion of the human underneath. A bruised, battered, and burned Anakin Skywalker gazed at the older Ahsoka. "I won't leave you," said the Ahsoka in the image. "Not this time." A long moment passed as the dark-robed Anakin let out odd, robotic wheezes. Then his brow furrowed. "Then you will die." A red lightsaber was ignited in his hand. Outside the image, both Anakin and Ahsoka were shocked. Elsewhere, Obi Wan was having his own revelations. A circle he had found revealed an image of a hallway in some sort of facility. Two figures, one in brown robes and the other in black robes, were having a lightsaber duel. The figure in brown robes was wielding a blue blade, something Obi-Wan had seen before, whilst the figure in black robes was wielding a red blade. That caught Obi-Wan's attention. He'd only ever seen 4 people wield red-bladed lightsabers. Count Dooku, who by all accounts was a Sith Lord, Asajj Ventress, Dooku's assassin, and Darth Maul and his brother, both of whom might still be alive. But this figure wasn't any of them. Whoever it was, they were entirely unfamiliar. After several moves, Obi-Wan was able to see the face of the figure in brown robes. It was himself, or rather, an older version of himself. The old man Kenobi had gray hair and a gray beard, causing Kenobi to subconsciously stroke his own beard thoughtfully. Suddenly, several men in white armor ran towards the pair in the image. Obi-Wan almost mistook them for clone troopers, but quickly realized that was false. These soldiers were all different heights, and the armor also looked incredibly different. Far behind the group of white troopers, a group of people walked into the large chamber, approaching a pathetic excuse for a freighter starship. There were 4 individuals, 3 humans, 2 male and 1 female, and a large Wookiee. One of the males had blonde hair and was wearing what looked like the clothes of a desert farm boy. Meanwhile, the other had brunette hair and was wearing a dark vest over a white shirt with long, dark blue pants. The female human also had brunette hair and was wearing the princess robes. "Ben," the young man with blonde hair said quietly. Departing from the others, he ran towards the soldiers, the dark figure, and the older Obi Wan. He stopped halfway across the chamber, staring. The fight between older Kenobi and the dark figure halted, and Obi Wan averted his eyes towards the boy, albeit briefly. Then he made a smirk and looked back towards the dark figure in front of him. He closed his eyes and held his blade up, leaving himself vulnerable. The dark figure saw their opportunity and swung the red blade at Kenobi, slicing clean through his body. Obi-Wan watched through the window in horror as his older self was killed, his body inexplicably disappearing, leaving behind an empty cloak and a deactivated lightsaber, both of which plummeted to the floor. "No!" yelled the blonde boy, prompting the group of white-armored soldiers to turn around before a blaster fight broke out. Obi-Wan looked away from the window. He couldn't process what he just saw or where they were. Despite his reservations about witnessing his own death, he needed to figure out more about what this place was. Meanwhile, Anakin and Ahsoka had found several more windows that depicted other moments. Some were moments they had seen or experienced themselves. They saw young Anakin successfully destroying a Trade Federation starship, and a slightly younger Ahsoka earning her second lightsaber. Other moments they knew of but had only heard about from others. Qui-Gon and Obi-Wan's duel with Darth Maul on Naboo, Obi-Wan interrogating the bounty hunter Jango Fett. However, many of the moments they saw were completely unknown to them. A lightsaber duel between an unfamiliar blonde-haired man and the dark figure they now knew was Anakin, or at least a Sith version of him. They also saw a moment depicting a dark figure speaking to a girl, attempting a Force mind probe on her. "Anakin, Ahsoka," Obi-Wan's voice called. "You need to see this." The pair hurried over to Kenobi, finding him standing in front of another window. The moment being depicted was taking place in Chancellor Palpatine's chambers. The Chancellor was there, but he looked very different. His skin was shriveled and gray, and he looked as if he had been burned by something. Kneeling in front of him was Anakin, only slightly older than he was now. "What have I done?" said Anakin inside the window, his voice full of regret. "You're fulfilling your destiny, Anakin," Palpatine said in an eerie, deep tone. "Become my apprentice. Learn to use the dark side of the Force." There was a long pause before Anakin spoke again. "I will do whatever you ask." "Good," Palpatine responded. "Just help me save Padme's life," Anakin added. "I can't live without her." Both Obi-Wan and Ahsoka glanced briefly at the real Anakin, before turning back to the moment. Palpatine wheezed. "To cheat death is a power only one has achieved, but if we work together, I know we can discover the secret." The Chancellor wheezed again. "I pledge myself," Anakin said, "to your teachings." "Good, good," Palpatine said under heavy breaths. "Good." He let out a painstaking long wheeze, and his lips curled into an evil grin. "The Force is strong with you. A powerful Sith you will become. Henceforth, you shall be known as Darth Vader." The three Jedi turned away from the window, letting the moment continue to play. "At first I wasn't sure what exactly this place was," Obi-Wan said, "but after seeing what I have seen here, I figured it out. This realm is known as the World Between Worlds." "Wait," Anakin said. "Isn't that a story for younglings? I thought it was completely fictional." "Normally it is used for children's stories, yes," Kenobi continued. "But there was one text I was able to find deep in the temple archives. It was so ancient that when I showed it to Jocasta Nu, She actually laughed. That's freaky, Anakin said. Indeed. Madame Jocasta never laughs. Anakin earned himself another glare from his former master. What is the world between worlds? Ahsoka added, breaking the tension. A realm that is beyond time, Kenobi said, where one can view the events of the past, present, and future. Everything we see here has already happened, or will happen at some point. Anakin was devastated. Everything? Was he really destined to turn into that?
Commander Cody.
Palpatine's voice drew their attention back to the window.
The time has come. Execute Order 66.
The Chancellor was now wearing a black hooded robe and standing over a hologram projector showing the clone commander of Obi Wan's 212th Legion.
Yes, my lord,
the trooper said, before the window abruptly shifted, showing many scenes in rapid succession, but all of them the same. Clone troopers turning on their Jedi generals. Ki-Adi-Mundi and Aayla Secura being gunned down by their own men. Plo Koon's starfighter being destroyed right out of the skies. Obi-Wan getting blown off the side of a cliff by a mass driver cannon. Even Ahsoka herself being attacked from all sides by Captain Rex and the Rebel First. It's horrible, Ahsoka murmured. Is this all really going to happen someday? It's hard to say, Obi-Wan answered. It seems that this is the timeline we are currently in. However, the Force could not have guided us here only to see our own demise. There are people here we are seeing that we either don't know yet, or don't exist yet. I agree, Anakin said. We can't have come here for no reason. The question now is, what do we plan to do with the information we've seen here? I think we should tell the Council, Ahsoka butted in. If we told the Council about this, they'd think we were crazy, Obi-Wan pointed out. However, I think that our combined accounts should prove sufficient evidence for the Council to conduct an investigation. If we're lucky, they'll hear us out, Anakin finished. Good plan. Back to the Council, then, Kenobi said. That is, as soon as we figure out how to get out of here.